Hi there. So I want to talk about healing from toxic mold. I mentioned, I talked a little bit about this in another video, maybe the last video, maybe one video ago, or maybe it's a video to come. I don't know. But I've just recently talked about this, but I want to talk more about this in more depth for all of you out there suffering with toxic mold. I suffered with toxic mold for a very, very long time. I think I want to say when it started was maybe 2017, maybe towards the end of 2017. But regardless, I was in toxic mold for 4 to 5 years. Now, if you are going through toxic mold right now, I'm sure that sounds very scary and very alarming because you know just how bad it can be. And that's not me saying that it's going to take that long for you to heal. I just so happen to live in a part of the United States that is very isolated, and has a lot of old historic houses. We lived in an old house. Surprisingly, it was a newer house than all the rest. Like most of the houses in the area that I live, I'm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I can say that, I've said that before. The Upper Peninsula has a lot of old houses. And most of the old houses here are from the early 1900s. Some of them I think might be from the late 1800s. So, surprisingly, the house that I lived in while I had toxic mold was built in the 1940s and then had an added on part in I think the early 2000s. And surprisingly, even more surprisingly, it was the new add-on of the house that had the toxic mold. So, it's not to say that, new houses are going to have more mold than old houses or vice versa, but that's just what happened with us. And yeah, I also live in a very isolated place in America. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan is so extremely isolated and has the most rugged, real nature that you will ever see. Some of the most beautiful things that I have ever seen in my life here. And with that, not a lot of people here. It's actually funny because I lived in the Lower Peninsula. Nobody called it that when we lived in Michigan, the main part of Michigan. Nobody called that part of Michigan the Lower Peninsula ever down there. It was just, we live in Michigan. Oh, and that's the Upper Peninsula. But that sort of paints a picture of the vibe of the Upper Peninsula, right? Is that we're sort of up here in the Upper Peninsula now. We are sort of the forgotten stepchild of Michigan, truly, because people leave us out of maps all the time. It's actually kind of like a running gag in some of these Michigan groups, because especially Upper Peninsula Michigan groups, because it's we're left out of a United States map yet again. Or oh wow, this map's talking specifically about Michigan and they left out half of Michigan. And when I lived in the main part of Michigan, we always use our hands as maps here in Michigan, which I think it would be flipped on this camera. Yep. We use our hands as maps because this literally looks like the shape of Michigan, and this would be the Upper Peninsula. And the lower part, when I lived in the in the lower part. Nobody ever even talked about the Upper Peninsula. Like, sometimes people would bring it up and go, oh yeah, it is beautiful up there. It is God's country. But nobody ever really talked about it. And anybody that I met growing up had never even been there before. We would forget about it all the time. Like, truly, I forgot it existed for most of my life. And it's so sad to say because it is my home now. Like, I love it here. And I've lived here for quite a while. I think 8 years. We might be past 8 years now. But I say that all to say that this is a very rugged place. And also, I lived here for about 8 years, right? And it's kind of crazy, but the majority of those 8 years I was spent being extremely ill with toxic mold. But it's so isolated here that we live on something called Yooper time, okay? And so, you know, this video, I'm sorry, this is not going to be a cut to the chase sort of a video. This is just going to be me talking about a little bit about my experience and about some positivity for you out there if you are feeling like you need some positivity about healing. But this is just a little bit about my personal story, okay? I hope that's okay that I share that. I know that when I was in toxic mold, sometimes my brain just could not even absorb anything that somebody was saying. I really couldn't. My life was literally YouTube because I had nothing else. I don't even think TikTok was out yet or really a thing yet. I didn't have a good phone either, so it might have been out. And I had just the worst phone. I had a track phone. Could take maybe 3 photos. It was awful. But, and I shared it with my whole family. Or really, it was just me and my mom who shared that phone. I had another family member who had a way better phone than we did, but and that was that. Like, where was I going with that? Like, I could not focus at all on, and I still have a hard time focusing. I'm not the sharpest. When I was a teenager, I was very sharp. I had an incredible memory, and I don't mean that to just be like bragging. I really don't, because I had a lot of flaws, okay, obviously, but like, I just am saying that to say, like, I had one of the best memories in terms of anybody that I was aware of. Like, I almost felt like I almost could have been photogenic, but I wasn't quite there. Sadly, since being in toxic mold, I have not gotten back there. I'm nowhere even near that. But I couldn't, when I was in toxic mold, in the thick of it, I couldn't even focus on a video. I couldn't even focus, really. I would watch YouTube constantly because that's all I had. But I couldn't really focus on anything. And it was a real struggle to really try to center myself and just focus on what a person was saying. And when people would talk about healing from toxic mold, it drove me nuts when they would either try to gain something from it, or when they would try to go on this long tangent, like a blog post, where they're telling about their whole story before getting to how they heal. That drove me nuts, because I'm like, you're literally banking on my healing right now. And I am feeling like I'm on the brink of being unalived. So it drove me nuts. And it made me feel like I was being taken advantage of, to be honest. So this is not that sort of a video. I'm not trying to prolong how I healed, because I talk about how I healed elsewhere. I talked about it on my Facebook page, Healing from Toxic Mold. I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning of this video. I'm so sorry. It's not a secret. It's not me trying to, like, 20-minute ad roll. No, I don't even have ad roll. So, I'm not trying to use that, but that was rough. And so Healing from Toxic Mold is my Facebook page if you want to direct message me and I will just send you everything I did to heal. And you can just begin your healing journey. But this is about my healing journey right now. Okay? I'm just talking about it. Sorry, I really should have mentioned that before. But so I went through all, like, just to say that, I say all that just to say that we lived in a very rural place, a very rural area. And we live on something called Uper time, which is pretty much just people show up when they want to show up. In the bigger cities, it's not so much like that, but you go even a little bit out and it's like, you'll straight up call a business and you'll be like, hi, I'm calling for this. And they'll go, yup. Okay. When do you want that done? Okay. Yeah. Okay. And you're like, did you write that down? Did you even get my name? Are you legit? And then, like, sometimes their caller ID won't even be the business name. It'll be like John. And you're like, who's John? Am I talking to John right now? It's just, and then you make this appointment for something quite serious. You're explaining to the dude, like, look, I have water streaming down from my house. Like, I need your help. And they will literally be like, okay, yep, we'll be out there. Well, yep. Okay. I'm like, okay, so you're going to be out there. Okay, because usually businesses repeat when the date is. You're going to be there on Thursday at 9:30 a.m., right? And they're just like, yep, and then they don't show. So, and that would happen a lot. They wouldn't show up, or when they would show up, they would look at it and go, yeah, we can do this. You're gonna have to get me to show up on a different day to actually do this, because really just me coming into your house was pretty much for me to look at this and clarify what you said over the phone, and that's gonna be $80. And that's gonna be $80, and I'm going to, I don't know, maybe come back, make another appointment and hope I show up on that day, and then we'll redo all of this. And that was like a lot of what went on, is just to try to get this thing fixed. It was a lot of that. And we also didn't really understand what the issue was. Was it piping? Was it the roof itself? Was it, I don't know, like, was it a pileup of snow? No idea. And nobody gave us a straight answer on what it was. They would just, okay, yeah, it looks like this. And then the next guy comes, yeah, it looks like this. And we would save up because, again, we were already so sick that my mom tried to continue working as long as she possibly could at her job. But she ended up having to call in a lot and then eventually couldn't work anymore. And so we were relying on one person's paycheck. And trying to save up for that. It was rough. It was really, really rough, especially when you would save up for it. You would save up all of this money. And it was a lot for us to even save up $80 for them to show up to our house, let alone like $1,000, which is one of the estimates somebody said, to redo all of like piping at our house. And we were like, okay. So it was this long process, right? 14 minutes in, so sorry to say that it was a very long process and very confusing for us. It might not be that way for you, but we lived in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? And yeah. And it was pretty eye-opening and pretty sad because we lived in a house full of girls, full of females. We would explain that we were sick. There would be literal water streaming down, like a hole in our roof, a hole, and water streaming down, something we had never experienced before, ever in our lives. I mean, where we come from, that's not normal. You know what I mean? And I think that for the majority of people, that's not normal. And these men who, I mean, I don't know their financial situation. I can't say specifically how much they make, but they're working these good jobs and they drive these giant trucks, come in and they look at these women who are clearly suffering and who have explained that they were suffering over the phone. And they got to see that this water was leaking through our home and decided, I don't really feel like showing up Thursday to help them. And well, it might cost $1,000. I don't know. Like it felt terrible witnessing people like really not take our situation seriously. But that was us. That was our situation. And that was, a lot of people don't go through toxic mold for that long. And also a big part of the reason why we went through toxic mold for so long was because we didn't know how to heal. We were healing kind of on our own. Luckily, we found a really good doctor. I mean, and that was by the grace of God, because truly, I've never found a doctor like her since. And I've never found a doctor like her before. And so she helped us a lot, but even she didn't know anything about toxic mold. I mean, she suggested charcoal. And, a lot of doctors suggest activated charcoal, even though it's fast acting and rips the mold out instead of gently pushing it out of your body, which is why I recommend bentonite clay, food grade bentonite clay. So, there were a lot of things that she was learning with us. And she could only help us to a certain point. And then after 2020, she had to go on and do other things. But that's why it took a long time for us, is because we didn't really get a whole lot of help. We didn't really know how to heal. We were kind of just looking things up on our own and discussing them with our doctor and just sort of working on our adrenals, that type of thing. And it was rough. It was really, really rough healing. It felt like we were completely alone, my mom and I, because we were just in this together, and we were declining, and we were declining. We were declining so fast, and yet it felt like we were in the dark. And it was really rough. And so I don't think it'll take that long for a lot of you out there. Maybe it already has. I don't know, but I'm really thankful that I have been given information on how to heal, because this information should not be as hard to find as it is. But my mom and I, luckily, we had each other. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people who suffer with toxic mold do not have that. I've been in toxic mold related Facebook groups for a long time, and they were helpful in some ways because you really got a good look on how other people are doing, and you feel a lot less alone. And some people offer some good advice there. They do, or at least send you down these rabbit holes to research. But it also is extremely scary in those groups because so many people they're not doing too great, obviously. I mean, mold is crazy. And it sometimes can make you feel like, is it possible to heal? And a lot of people over the years when we were looking into it, a lot of people would say, I don't think it's possible to heal. You never truly do. And my mom and I are both what we consider crunchy. And I don't know if you guys know what crunchy means. It's kind of this new term online. But it essentially means like super natural, earthy, trying to do things the most natural way that you possibly can, like those type of people. And we've always been extremely crunchy. Even before crunchy, the term was a thing. And so we were like, we both were like, I'm determined to heal. I'm determined to heal. I would tell myself, like, there has to be a way to heal and to heal naturally. Because I would also see a lot of people in the groups taking different medications and stuff, and I have always been just really apprehensive to take any sort of medication for myself. And I know that medications, are sometimes necessary and save people's lives even, but I've always been very apprehensive to take medication and stuff. And so I just tried my hardest to find the healthiest, most crunchy way, most natural way to heal. Things from the earth, things that I know how to read the label of, things that I know where they come from. And luckily I was given that knowledge. But it is like a sea out there of knowledge, and you just don't even know what is true sometimes. But I'm here to say today that I'm healed. I'm healed from toxic mold. I'm still working on a lot of different other things, and it is interesting because I healed from toxic mold, and I had been healing for a year straight. It's not to say that no stress had come upon me, because there was a lot of stressful moments within that year of healing. And then I fell homeless, starting last summer, all the way until November 2023. And that was stressful, and that wasn't very good for my health, because, my body had already gone through a lot of stress with toxic mold. Toxic mold is stress on the body. And so there are aspects of my health that I'm still trying to recover from, but today I do not feel that toxic mold is a problem for me at all. And my symptoms that I had during toxic mold have completely faded away, which, round of applause, right? Because when I was in toxic mold, when I was in the thick of it, actually the entire time, I was not sure if I would ever heal. I felt like constantly I was on the brink of being unalived. Sorry. I felt hopeless constantly. It was a very traumatic experience being through toxic mold. And it was hard for me to even stand up and walk around and live life. Like, I had a really hard time taking a shower even. I would bawl my eyes out every single time I had to take a shower for many years. And there would be long stretches of time where I wouldn't take a shower at all, because actually a lot of the time I didn't take a shower at all, because that was so extremely exhausting and draining and painful, and it was rough. And I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without being completely out of breath, and not just out of breath like, oh, I feel like I can kind of catch my breath in 20 minutes. It felt like I felt like I needed to be rushed to the hospital every single time, and the body aches were unreal. Almost every symptom imaginable I had experienced. And I'm very thankful that today I don't have any of that. I don't have any of that. Actually, it's wild, because the other day I've on and off this year been able to walk up to 3 miles. And the other day we were doing the math on how many miles we had walked and hiked, and I think it was around 5. And there's been moments where I've been trying to build up my endurance for running. I've always wanted to run. It feels so great for me to run. Especially on a good day, I feel refreshed by running. And I've been able to run sprints on the beach and kind of try to build my endurance up for running. And that's incredible, because when I was in the thick of it, I really felt that those things were so far out of my reach that was completely, that was impossible for me. And it felt, when I would try to think positively and pray with confidence and with faith, it felt like I was wishing on a star. It felt like I was blowing on a dandelion and just like I wish with all my heart, you know? But it happened. It really happened. And I know that praying in faith that it will be done, even though you cannot see it with your own eyes, is crucial. And that's something that, even though I've seen miracles, literal miracles happen since then, and even healing from toxic mold is a miracle in itself. Not to say that it's impossible, I'm just saying it's a miracle in itself, especially how sick we were, for how many years we were, to now having all of the things I had wished for, and I had prayed for. That's pretty spectacular. I mean, it's a miracle. It is a miracle. And I know that can be possible for anyone, especially when praying in faith and just praying knowing that it will be done, even though you have no proof in front of you that it can be done or that it will be done. Because success stories, there's not a whole lot of them out there. There's not a whole lot of success stories out there. But I can take a shower anytime I want to. That felt like impossible. That felt like an impossibility. When I was in toxic mold, it felt like no matter how healthy I get, that's going to be an impossibility. And it's not. And it's not. And I'm able to do that at any point. That's so crazy. And on top of that, going on long hikes if I want to. That's incredible. Now, I went through a lot of other stressors. Obviously, I mentioned homelessness. And homelessness was just an aspect of homelessness. There were so many other stressors attached to the homelessness that I think obviously slow down your healing process. But, you know, if you are out of the mold and you are detoxing, there's no reason why you can't heal. And believe that with all of your soul and spirit. Believe it. Because even when you are detoxing and you're out of mold, it doesn't feel like you're healing right away. It doesn't. I mean, there's a long stretch where you're like, is this doing anything? Like, and you think, why am I even doing this? What's the point? If I'm not even going to be healing, what's the point in doing this whole regimen? I mean, healing is never linear. Healing of any kind is not linear. That means it's not going in a straightforward upward motion. It's got zigzags. Some days you will feel exactly like you were at your worst points, and you were like, this is it. This is it. I knew that healing was too good to be true, but it wasn't. This is just a dip. And your body needs those dips to draw out the toxins. And there will always be an upward trajectory. So I'm here to say that healing from toxic mold is possible. It is. And I am living proof of that. I am living proof of that. There are a lot of other aspects that I still have to heal within myself. Notably adrenal fatigue. And I know that that's tied to my nervous system. um, like my cortisol levels, those are all related and linked. And I know that those are all linked. I highly suspect, I shouldn't say I know this, but I highly suspect that those are also linked to my weight, because I'm overweight even though I'm not overeating. And I was overweight, 100 pounds overweight, gaining rapidly while I was in toxic mold, while I was vegan, while I was eating 800 calories a day at most. It's so embarrassing to say that, but it's true. That's what my life was before I was in toxic mold, and then during the beginning parts of toxic mold. So I know that my weight is tied to some sort of adrenal problem, most likely. And it doesn't bother me. It used to a lot more. Especially since health, like I mentioned, being crunchy is such a big part of my life. I love learning about health and natural ways of doing things, even grounding, and even like the maybe some people would consider this weird, but like speaking kindness to your water, because water is life. And also, you are made of water, right? I mean, your body is like, what, 70-something% of water? So breathing and speaking beautiful things to your water changes the molecular structure, kind of. I'm so terrible at explaining what that is. But there has been proof of when people speak kind things to their water versus unkind things to their water, and what that does to the water, and how unkind things actually grew mold on the water. Isn't that wild? And maybe there's something to that about how unkindness breeds and spreads the toxic mold. Would not be surprised, because I felt so dark. Everything felt so dark. And there were a lot of dark people in my life, like truly dark people in my life, while I was in toxic mold. It just felt so dark in that moment. It felt like my spark was gone, and the light was left, like, just barely hanging on, But when you speak light to your water and to yourself, all of that is also very healing. So, I'm very crunchy. And so, I'm very crunchy, I don't know. And I like to eat crunchy, like, not crunchy, healthy. I like to eat healthily because I think it actually tastes good. But that's just my silly brain that makes me love to do that. Like, I think actual vegetables taste good. And I know that's weird. I know that a lot of people think that's weird. But I do. And, but you're eating life, And so I think that's important. But, so obviously especially when I was vegan before toxic mold and a little bit during toxic mold, gaining 100 pounds very rapidly was so crazy. Like, it felt like I was looking outwardly to how I felt. And then throughout toxic mold, I felt that way too, because toxic mold changes the way that you look. It really does. And if you go back on my TikTok page, you'll really see the puffiness in my face. Even though I've remained the same weight, there's been so much puffiness, like, within my face and within probably my whole body. But and that's really gone down a lot. So, a lot of positives. I'm healed. Like, this is crazy. And I mean, I never even thought I would be able to make videos again. I used to make videos when I was like a teen, young adult, and here I am, like, making videos again. And I really wasn't sure that would ever happen. But here I am. And you can heal too. You can heal too. And you will heal. Just say that to yourself. I will heal. I will heal. I will heal. And I am healing.